Moving along to the regional and state and federal government affairs committees, we want to get an update from RJ Easton with U.S. Water Company. RJ is the vice chair of the Federal Government Affairs Committee. RJ?
Thank you, Wes. Let me apologize, folks, for any background noise. I blew a flat earlier today, so I have found myself at the car dealership getting that replaced. So I apologize for any background noise or unexpected noises besides myself here. I do want to start by complimenting WQA's legislative staff. They have done a heck of a job in building a very cohesive plan for 2024 that builds off a lot of successes that we've seen over the last few years. So to start, the goals you see in front of you, these are for both committees, both the federal as well as the state and local government affairs committee. And I think what you'll see is a common thread amongst these goals in that growing association involvement in government affairs, regardless of the level or regardless of the individual's experience, is going to be critical for us as a committee moving forward. So for starters, educating that both our WQA members as well as legislators and regulators will look to monitor and track federal, state, and local policies that impact our industry while keeping WQA members well informed, and from that developing policy priorities accordingly. But we'll certainly look to hopefully make that as much as possible and in a growing way a two-way street where members are getting involved in informing WQA's legislative staff of areas of concern, areas that we need to be looking out for, new regulation or new legislation, especially at local and state levels that could pop up in what I like to call kind of a game of whack-a-mole. Beyond that, we'll look to engage the members and empower them with the tools to engage and educate policy members on key issues to ensure informed decision making. So as I mentioned in our previous goal, getting more involvement from the members is critical, but the WQA legislative staff has done a good job of putting together materials and tools that I think can make it a more comfortable and an easier conversation, if you will, to get members involved directly with the regulators and legislators within their states as well as in their localities. And then finally, from an advocacy perspective, WQA staff, as I've mentioned, already has and will into the future stands ready to react and respond to these emerging threats and regulatory issues. And ultimately, from my personal perspective, this is one of, if not the most important thing that the committee can assist with, and that the legislative staff at WQA does. Again, I call it a game of whack-a-mole, and we've been quite successful at it in years past in an effort to strike down or a better way is educate state and local legislators and regulators on the impact that legislation, regulation can have, and oftentimes the misinformation that accompanies it. So we'll break the accomplishments into each specific area. So starting with regional and state committee, some of the highlights from the past year: overturned a 15+ year regulation in Houston. So this was working in concert with the Texas Water Quality Association, as well as a number of association members within Texas, that amended the city of Houston's specialty plumbing code and created an exemption from a double check valve for residential water softeners. So for dealers in particular, manufacturers certainly, dealers in particular, this was a big win for anyone who's doing business in the state of Texas and in particular Houston. Beyond that, there was the passage of Indiana House Bill 1138. This was a lead in school drinking water bill, and WQA successfully advocated for third-party certified language and appropriate NSF and ANSI standards to be included in the law. A common thread that you'll see throughout the accomplishments as well as the goals is the more that WQA has gotten involved at a federal and a state level, the more that these groups of legislators and regulators are turning to WQA and its dealers, its association members, as a source of information, as a source of expertise. And that's a big win long term, and a common thread amongst all of our goals long term is to continue to be that area of expertise. And then finally, 10+ letters were sent on state legislation and regulations issues, briefs and specific state topics. So again, it's pulling in members that help expand upon the 2 or 3 dedicated individuals at WQA to keep abreast of as many issues that are going on as possible at state and local levels. On the Federal Government Affairs Committee side, we had our first in-person congressional fly-in Washington, D.C. since before COVID. So this was a very exciting event, one of, if not the best attended as well by WQA association members, with 38 people on site. Those 38 attendees had meetings with 59 different congressional offices, helping to foster relationships for the industry. And why these groups were there to talk about one or two very specific agenda items, both the Healthy H2O Act and some other items. It also helps to build both at a federal level, but then the individual state level, meeting with House members, meeting with Senate members. Oftentimes these issues trail back into their local offices. And so they're great relationships across the board that are being created. Additionally, the group commented on federal regulations and legislation related to PFAS, again, just growing that level of connection and of expertise in the eyes of regulators and legislators, the interested parties. And then finally, there was the introduction of the Healthy H2O Acts in both chambers of Congress and the creation of a grassroots outreach campaign. The WQA has been able to secure 30 plus co-sponsors that are from both the House of Representatives as well as from the Senate side. And so there's a lot of traction in a bipartisan manner for the Healthy H2O Act. If you have any questions on this, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of the committee members or the legislative team at WQA. They'd be more than happy to answer all of your questions there. So as we look ahead, again, we're looking to effectively just expand upon what we have already been doing. So from an education perspective, developing resources and planning webinars on government affairs related topics. The hope here is to build confidence amongst association members who maybe have little or no experience with any type of political, legislative, regulatory matters, and lowering that as any kind of a barrier to get involved in these things. Because association members getting involved really expands the reach of what we're able to keep track of and what we're ultimately able to accomplish. We'll look to expand the congressional fly-in. We want to encourage as many WQA members as possible to coordinate state legislative days as well in 2024. These two things really, again, help to build reliance and trust on WQA's expertise so that if something, let's say, starts to make it through the halls of your state legislature, et cetera, that people in those key positions of power feel like they have someone that they can turn to for help. And then finally, from an advocacy perspective, we want to present grassroots opportunities for WQA policy priorities, including to continue to advocate for and push for passage of the Healthy H2O Act.